Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Book Club Q&A. We are here today with the authors of They Did What? Unbelievable Tales from the Workplace. This is Cornelia Gamlam and Barbara Mitchell, who are also HR Exchange Network contributors. You've seen their column on our site. You've also joined them for some previous webinars. And today we'll be talking to them about their book, which is fascinating and really a different kind of read. So welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining us. Oh my gosh, I've been reading the book. It's shocking.
We love to hear that, Francesca.
Yes.
That is great news.
Oh my gosh, it's so shocking and it's such an easy read. Really great stuff. I mean, I never realized, we all know that there are problems with sexual harassment, people who hook up at work that shouldn't, but I mean, those stories, those are all real.
Every one of them is
Yes.
real
You
in
know,
some way, shape, or form.
yeah, what we did in a lot of cases, all of the stories about sex on the conference room table, it was like, we were like, how often does this happen? But
Yes.
what we did in a lot of cases is we would kind of combine them or take a piece of this one and a piece of this one. So so it was kind of masked a little bit, so nobody could read it and say, wait a minute, that
Yes.
happened to. So there,
I saw that in
while
the
we didn't make up a lot of stuff, we may have changed details and just kind of sort of blurred it a little bit.
right, so people wouldn't know who it is.
Yeah.
I mean,
So we would not end up in court. Let's just put it that way.
of course.
Because we did interview a lot of people who told us their stories, and we
Yeah.
promised them that they would not recognize their story.
Yeah, of course. Well, I love how it's these little vignettes of them talking, and then all of these very smart tips are thrown in without you realizing that it's a tip.
Perfect.
Yeah, it says they're saying their dialogue. I've been highlighting the book.
Oh, we love hearing this. This is so encouraging.
Yes.
Oh no, it's really wonderful. And I'll be doing after this interview, besides this interview, what I've been doing whenever I get to do a Q&A, in addition, you're still treated like part of the summer reading list since you're in the list. So we're still doing a YouTube video with my review, which explains what I thought
Great.
of the book. So that will be
Great.
coming as well. And just really wanted to talk to you about a lot of these issues that you brought up in the book. Obviously, my question was also, how often does this happen? Were these just the most shocking things, or is it more common
Well,
than
if you could just imagine when we did our first interview and the person told us a story about sex on the conference room table or something to that effect, and then we would do the next interview and the next interview, and we would not say, tell us about a time when employees
Yes.
had sex on the table. We would say, tell us a story about something that unusual has happened at work or whatever. And it just kept coming and
My
coming
gosh.
and coming. And we're like, and that's why you see the cover of the book. We had to put a conference room table on the cover of.
Yes, I know. I know, it's so perfect. It is perfect. The whole thing also about how do you tell people they need to wear underwear to work and stuff like that.
Oh, that came up more than once.
Yes.
One of the
Oh my
reasons, and I know you asked, we sent you some questions, but one of the things we wanted people to come away with is, I had no idea HR had to do with all this stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, and we hope that comes through, that, being an HR person is it's not a piece of cake.
It's not a piece of cake at all. What motivated you to do this book?
Well, I actually had the idea for this book when we finished writing the first edition of the Big Book of HR back in 2011, 2012. Because I wrote the chapter on employee relations, and I thought, it's going to be an easy chapter to write. And then I realized it wasn't easy, only because how do I pare it down? How do I contain it? Because I can only put so much in that chapter. And it made me think about a time somebody said to me, I was teaching an HR class, and she said, how do you learn employee relations? And I said, that's a really good question, because a big chunk of them, not all of it, but a big chunk of it is dealing with all of these issues. And you really learn it through practice and experience and hearing other people's stories, sharing with your colleagues. And that was kind of the genesis of the idea. And, once we got through, we were almost finished with the big book of HR. And I said to Barbara, I had this idea. What do you think about it? And we kind of let it sit for a few months, but not too long, because I think it was like we handed that manuscript in July, and by the fall we were seriously talking about it. And then we said, well, let's start collecting some stories from people. Let's see what we can get and see where it goes from there. So
I really love how it's these small vignettes with these characters that keep coming up who are HR people, and you just hear these stories. I particularly liked the one because I've experienced it in other situations where the employee assistant programs and people not telling their mental illness problems, and then what do you do when they're outbursts? It's something they can't help, but they are also with the customers and with the other employees, and how do you handle that? I thought that was really great, because it gives some advice to the people reading it who are in HR, and maybe helps them recognize they're not alone, and give them a kind of an idea of what to do. On that same token, what would you say sets the book apart from others? You've done other books that are more straightforward and factual, and telling people just, this is what you need to do in this situation. Tell me a little bit about what sets this book apart. It's very different.
Well, you just said it exactly. When we talked about first writing this book, we thought, should we do it as a how-to, tell a story, and then tell what the best solution would be. And we decided not to do that. We decided to tell the story. And while yes, there are examples in there of what to do and what not to do, but we didn't want this to be a preachy, teachy kind of a book.
Right.
We wanted it to be stories that people could relate to, like you just shared, where you saw something that maybe you had already been through, and then you learned something from it. And that was kind of the way we wrote it. We also kind of thought, and I said this over and over, that this is the book that every HR person threatens to write at some point.
I bet.
Because this has happened this is real. And so we kind of thought, okay, well, we'll write that book, but we're not going to tell people this is what you do, step 1, step 2, step 3, because that's what we do in our, like the big book of HR, where it is very much we researched book of the topic, and it is a teaching kind of a book. This is you can learn from a story. And we really do believe that stories are the way people really get information. They connect to a story where they might not connect to this is what happened and this is what we did to solve it.
Right.
Well, it's funny, if I can just add to that. One of the people we had who was a beta reader, who had fairly young person, but has had management experience and reads a lot, both fiction and nonfiction. And he had made the comment, this isn't just any old crappy business book that has a bunch of case studies in it. He said he really liked the approach to storytelling, because kind of what Barbara just said, but it brings the situation alive. And even if we had made up the stories, if we had put it in that context, he said you learn a lot more by that, because now you're relating to characters.
Yes.
And not just, like Barbara said, not just looking at how do I handle this. And I think the other lesson we wanted to drive home from there is when you're dealing with employees and employee behavior, there isn't one right way to do it, because every situation is different. Every organization is different. They have different policies, and their workplace and culture may be different. So there's different ways that you go about approaching some of these situations. And we tried to bring that out when we had the networking group sitting around and talking.
Yes.
This is what we did, and then somebody else go, that's a good idea, but it wouldn't work in my organization, because of these things. So it's that, unlike looking at benefits and saying, this is how you process claims and stuff like that, or this is how you implement a benefits program, much more straightforward. But now you're dealing with people and the way, just general human behavior.
Yes, which is insane sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Outrageous, actually.
How many times, Cornelia, did we say to each other, we can't make this stuff up?
Exactly.
You
Yeah,
can't.
it's real. It's real.
Oh yeah, and it's really shocking. I will say, like in the case of that example about the employee assistance programs and everything else, I really felt like you showed through Emil, who was a great worker, but made kinds of a bunch of mistakes along the
Mhm.
way, and you showed what he could have done differently, which is why I feel like the book should be for managers too, not just people in
Oh,
HR.
absolutely.
It really would
Yeah.
help them.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
agree.
yeah, I think so for sure. And in terms of that, we've talked about in the past that HR is looked upon as kind of the enforcer of rules. Do you feel that's what the book is about?
No, we do not.
I don't either.
No. But each of us has been an HR person for more years than we'd like to add up. Uh, it is so, yes, HR does have to be the conscience of the organization, all those kinds of things that are part of it. But no, HR does so much more and contributes on in such a level. And that's why, and I think we've discussed this before with you, that this is such an exciting time
Yes.
for HR, because HR is kind of coming into its own. If people are stepping up and saying, okay, there's a lot that we can do that you have no idea what we can do. Give us a chance.
Right, I agree. And there's so much in the book that you bring that up. You show how things were different. You talked about how people approached AIDS and people who might have had AIDS
Mhm.
at the workplace, and how that's changed. I mean, dramatically. All the
Dramatically.
things about discrimination, women at work. Cornelia, you were going to say something. I don't want
Yeah,
to.
the only thing I think I was going to add to that is we hope that people realize, you're talking about the enforcer of rules. A lot of times people think that it's HR that makes all of these decisions about people. And it really isn't. It's the managers who make the
Right.
decisions. HR is there to advise and guide them. But, at the end of the process, when a decision has to get made, it's the manager that has to step up and say, well, this is what we're going to do. And stand behind that decision. And, unfortunately, HR often takes the bad rap for a lot of that stuff. But, and we hope that's, just a regular employee picking up the book who's never had management experience. If they're enjoying the book, but we hope they kind of walk away with that, oh, it wasn't HR, it was my manager who did that, or made that decision.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I think that's a good point also. So what would you say, what do you hope are the biggest takeaways people who read the book get, whether they're HR or as you say, an employee? It's also a good book to read as an employee so you know what's really out of bounds, because some people obviously don't.
I don't know. I think I would say don't assume that, one of the lessons is don't assume that you know everything that goes on. We often, when we promote the book, we use, the icon of an iceberg, and so much happens below the surface. So much
Right.
happens, but behind those closed doors. And so many times employees think, that they're aware, they're scuttlebutt, they're aware that something's gone on, and they don't know, they don't have all the facts behind it. And, so I hope this is a wake up call that says,
Right.
oh, there sometimes is a lot more to these issues than what people, than what may appear to be, or than what the rumor mill is saying.
Absolutely. That's true. Barbara, did you want to add
I
anything?
just also wanted to add that we also really wanted the book to be, and I'm going to use the word entertaining, and I don't mean it in the traditional sense, but we didn't want, and I think I used this phrase a moment ago, but we didn't want it to be teachy preachy.
Right.
We wanted the stories to be and not we didn't try to make them as salacious as we could, because believe me, we could have done a lot more than we did
I
to
can imagine.
yeah.
Yeah.
But what we wanted was for people to, and that's why we're delighted that you have this on your summer reading list, because it is that kind of a book where you can learn something, but you can also laugh a little bit. You can go, oh my gosh, I never thought that would happen.
Right.
It's lighter. It's we think people learn better when they are. I know when I do training programs for clients, if if people laugh a little bit, it seems to open your brain in a different way. And we hope that this book has that kind of impact on people. They're learning, but they're also learning in a way where they're also a little bit entertained in the best
Yes,
sense of that word.
certainly. I call it edutainment, and I think that that's
That's a
very
good way to put
appropriate.
it. Yes,
Yes,
thank you.
very, very appropriate for this book because, like I said, it's a really fast read. You get involved in the characters. Um, I think that a lot of people will read it and can relate to it because you put these characters to it. Also, you remember those things stick out. It's not
Mhm.
like when you're just reading, a training manual or something
Right,
that
Exactly.
right.
says what to do.
Yeah.
So I agree.
That was our hope, and we're glad to hear that it connected with you. That's
Absolutely did.
very encouraging.
So do you have your own stories that you related to in this book?
Oh,
I know it's
absolutely.
shocking when you heard all of these stories from other people, but were you saying, "Oh yeah, I've been there"?
Yes, I think for a lot of them, it was like been there or dealt with something similar to that, so you could really relate to it. And some of our own experiences are woven through there. If we got to a point where we thought we needed a little bit more here, or it sparked something that one of us had experienced, we go, well,
Right.
let's go ahead and put our own stories in here as well.
Mhm.
Just because we've had those experiences too. So like I think we said in the beginning, in the forward, that it really is a composite of things that go on in organizations, and the characters, especially all the HR professionals in the book, are really a composite of all of the people that we spoke to. It's
Yes.
it's their stories and other people who we never even spoke to. I mean,
Right.
we
Right.
had people say, oh my God, yes, that happened. Or even come back to us later on, oh, I wish I had talked to you when you were writing this book. I have this example. Yeah.
Well, I also thought you beautifully included the types of people you expect in HR. Like there's the one woman who's really analytical, very data driven,
Mhm.
all of that. So you have like your different people who are really more about the relationship building. And so
Exactly.
it's kind of what you would expect in an HR department, let's say.
Yeah.
Um, so what would you say is the most shocking of the vignettes of the stories in this book for you? What were you most shocked to hear about?
Ah,
Oh,
shocked.
shocked. That's a good
That's a good
question.
one. People often ask us, what's your favorite? Um, Shocked.
I
What?
was shocked during I was like, "Oh
I
my
I'm
god."
not, I'm trying to think through the stories because it's been a while.
Yes, yes.
I would think the most shocking it was the one where the manager expected a new HR person to handle the extraordinarily difficult.
Yes.
Uh, is this your? I don't know how you want me to use the word on this
The
video,
book.
but
Yes, read the book. Read the
okay. I think that to me was the most shocking because it was, first of all, it was totally unfair for
Yes,
a man manager, male manager to expect a young female manager, not a man, even a manager, a pretty new
assistant,
HR person,
yeah.
to handle something that was extraordinarily difficult.
Yes, yes. I think that was a theme through this too, that sometimes people don't step up to the plate and fulfill their responsibilities.
Right?
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
it takes
expect,
courage.
let HR handle it.
Right. It takes courage to do the right thing. It's very hard.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Cornelia?
I would say, I mean, probably one of the things that actually that made me laugh, and you kind of go, well, what Barbara's favorite expression, "What's wrong with people," was the story of the person who got on their way to work, hit a squirrel, and
Yes.
was bitten by the squirrel, and then said, "Oh, I want workers' comp for this," and it had nothing to do with anything that goes on in the workplace. And yet
Right.
people want to, and I've seen variations of that where, well, I was at work, or I was on my way to work, or it happened after work at a happy hour, and shouldn't the company be liable? And it's like, well, you put yourself in these situations, and no, it's not related to work per se.
Right.
So it's, again, not shocking, but it never ceases to amaze me what people's expectations are of their employers.
Yes, yes. I mean, in some ways, we've increased our expectations of employers in a positive way. As you mentioned,
Mhm.
now we're showing all these wonderful things. But then you do have, my family has run a small business there since I was born, a landscaping company. And we've had experiences like that too with workman's comp and things like that.
Yes.
And it is kind of like, where did you get this idea
Yeah.
that your employer is responsible for that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, or that you're gonna keep your job. We've had people who were, in jail and didn't show up to work the next day and then thought they
Mhm.
could just keep their job
Yeah.
when they
Yeah.
got out of jail, and no,
Yeah.
it doesn't work
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah,
But
Not
well, in
so
fact,
much.
there's one story in the book that somebody told us, and it prompted something else that I had been involved with, where the manager found out over the weekend that an employee had been arrested and they were in jail. And it was like, what do we do? And I said, well, we have a policy that people can go on an unpaid leave of absence for 30 days. Put them on the unpaid leave, see what happens. If they can't come back in 30 days, then we
yeah,
terminate their employment. But it has nothing to do with them being arrested or being in jail. It's just their inability to work. But I
their
said, make,
inability to work,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
just
How
Fantastic.
basic is
document
that?
it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Very
Right.
basic. Yeah, it's kind of shocking what people expect. Is there anything else you'd like our readers to know about the book?
Well, just we'd love to maybe do a follow-up someday to this book, collect some more stories. So if
Bet
any
there
of
are
your
many.
readers have any really that they'd like to share with us, we're willing to listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could, I think, after having written this one, and we kind of are a little bit more experienced now at writing something other than straight nonfiction, we're well poised to be able to put something else together.
Oh, and I'm sure there's no shortage of stories.
No, there
And
are
oh,
not.
and we have already collected more since we finished this book.
Yes.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine. That's going to do it for today's episode of the HR Book Club Q&A. We want to thank Cornelia and Barbara for joining us and sharing their wisdom and thoughts about their book. We hope you'll read They Did What. It's a great read, and you'll learn more about it in the review that we have up on YouTube. And in the meantime, please, please do take the time to look at HR Exchange Network so that you don't miss any of our book reviews from the rest of the summer reading list. All of the events that we have coming up. Our next one is in September, and it's all about corporate learning. And you can watch all the others on demand, including our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging event, and so much more. We post daily content. We have a newsletter. We have a LinkedIn group that's really active, and we'd love to have you all there. Thank you so much and have a great day.